How is it going? This is the law rankings for Idola. I am excited to bring this to you. I think law right now is in the strongest state of the game. I often find myself not even using my chaos side because of how strong law is, and a lot of the chaos sides that I've seen are designed around counterplay to the law side of things. That isn't to say that chaos can't be a team strong suit. There are a couple of units that can really be game changing on the chaos side, but just because of how accessible units are in their prime state for law is in a very good place. So a couple of things to get off the ground is the separation between God and S tier. The difference between God and S tier isn't that one is more viable than the other. You will actually find that S tier sometimes makes more sense in a composition than God. It just means that if it is a God tier, it means that that's someone you want to take out ASAP. But it doesn't mean that they fill a role that may be better or worse than the S tier. It just generally means that as the opposition, you view them as the cornerstone and the backbone, and you want to get them out as quickly as possible. And based off your team comp will determine which of those are priorities. This game is so much more about synergy, typing, and timing than it is being a stat stick. And you will see that most common in the law rankings right here. So we're gonna go ahead and start out, and the strongest unit that I think on the law side of things right now is Camphor. That might really surprise you, but it shouldn't. It really shouldn't. There are so many viable water options right now, and Camphor giving you 2 water with everything he does, as well as giving you elemental boost and negating the other side's potential output. Camphor does quite a bit for the law side of things, and if I'm going into a Camphor, honestly, I gotta take him out ASAP because his stacking starts immediately. He is such a good on-ramp for your composition, for law compositions, that if they're starting out on the law side and Camphor's there, I don't even care if I have a bunch of fire units out there. I'm going to be targeting Camphor so he can't scale that team past where he initially will. Now, I'm going to put Summer Stella in the God tier next. Summer Stella is interesting as the God tier compared to her counterpart, which I will add now, regular Stella. And that is because both of them are very, very viable within the law side because there's so many viable water typings on the law side that are incredibly strong as law. But within a water composition, Stella is going to not only be your primary utility and support, she's also going to be your DPS because she does a ridiculous amount, well, not ridiculous, we'll say like a very strong amount of DPS to an AoE while healing your team. It is a very, very positive person to build your comp around. And as you guys probably know from my hydro pump video, she is the focal point for my law team, but without a Camphor and without a Popo Puddin', who I will put next on this list, she would not be as strong as that she is. But between Camphor and Popo Puddin', water units like these two will be popping off because they are such good mana generators for water, and in case of Popo, any element. The difference between Camphor and Popo is actually more different than you would imagine. The only reason that Camphor is here is because he is water. Popo also offers you 2 mana, but it's always on the wind side, and wind doesn't have as much priority when it comes to the law side. You generally need 4 mana on her, or 4 mana to begin using her mana conversion and giving your team the ability to gain their mana typing every time they're hit. And then her ultimate comes to play when she's at 10. So her at 4 mana and her at 10 mana are also very much supported by Summer Stella's EB. And so if you can begin to chain Summer Stella's EB, you can keep Popo Puddin's buffs up for eternity, essentially. So I find Popo Puddin' a little bit more conditional on the law side than Camphor is, but her and herself, and depending on how you build out your composition, is very much a cornerstone. And because she is so much of a cornerstone, that makes Windus continue to be god tier on the law side. Now, if you haven't known, Windus is my number one on the Chaos side. I think Chaos Windus is the strongest unit in the game, but if you're going to run her on the law side with Popo Puddin, and you're going to run a composition like Camphor, Stella, Windus, and Puddin, that's a very, very scary composition in itself right there. And then you could be flexing someone like a Sasha into the mix, and Wind becomes even more dangerous on the law side. From what I have seen, outside of stats sticking the opponent, the law side in the current meta does seem very mono element focused. It is generally the ones that you are using as your primarily team, and then you're reverse rushing into your Chaos side to use their EBs and to do as much damage as quickly as possible. And Windus, because she is so dependent on mana to begin using her more powerful skills, similar to how Stella is, she needs the on-ramps such as Popo to really have the staying power to be used as one of your primary units. So that's why I'm putting her after Popo, but on the Chaos side, you will notice there's a little bit of a difference. So this rounds up our god typing for this. These are very foundational to how I see the meta playing out from right now as the law side of things, and then it becomes a little bit more interesting from there, in my opinion. The next I'm going to grab here is Lamy. Lamy as a law unit is very strong, but her being a fire typing does hurt her. You'll hear me say that a lot. I don't think fire typings are very good in this meta unless they're providing something very specific. And I think that Lamy's kit in general is very strong. My only worry is her going into a Stella, be it Chaos or Law, getting hit from that AoE can one-shot her. So that is an issue, but generally Lamy isn't a priority when it comes to single target damage. So she can still get by, and if she's surviving 2+ turns or cycles of turns, she can be very foundational to a team. She is very, very strong in herself. I just worry about her in the current meta, but if I had her, which I do not because I haven't done any paid roles to that extent, I would not feel bad about throwing her on my law side in really investing into building her out. She is a very strong unit. She just is type disadvantaged in the current meta. So that separates her from a god and an S tier, in my opinion, right now, until we see more wind elements rise in priority on the law side of things. You might, I don't know, she can find her place. And she can be a pretty good counterbalance now that I think about it more out loud, but I still wouldn't say that she has the priority of a god. Her being an S is just, and at the front of the S feels very, very right to me. I don't think she's god, but she's definitely right there next to them. The next that I'm going to point out is Nadia. Nadia on the law side, it just makes a ton of sense given the priority that you have of Camphor within your law specs. She in herself doesn't do a ton. She is a really good secondary support because she doesn't offer AoE heals. She offers AoE defense up and AoE attack up, and then she can offer a single target heal. So she is very much there for her buff on her A3 and to become as a situational heal on her A2. Other than that, she's there providing water every time she attacks. So given the status of where water fits in the current law meta, I think she is very, very viable. And I often struggle to find decent replacements for her. But if you were to replace her, it would be with Anna Marie. Now, the only reason that Anna Marie isn't higher up on this list is because she's just so powerful as a chaos unit. And that has a net negative opportunity cost for her as a law side. But if you're running her on the law side, she is very much suitable in the S. She is a very reliable option. On the law side, she offers you a lot of what you would need to have a very well-rounded team, and also her being water adds that much priority to her. She is a very strong, well-rounded unit. And similar in nature is Jasper. Jasper is much better on the chaos side, but if you're going to run him on the law side, you're still going to get a lot of value out of him. It's just not as prominent. You're not truly looking to stack water or wind elements on the side, but if you're running Popo Puddin, you can definitely find reasons to run Jasper similar to Windus. But I think on the law side, Jasper doesn't do as much as he does on his chaos side in comparison to Windus. But he's still a very great option as a law. He just comes with the net negative opportunity cost as well. And the last one I'm going to put in the S tier is actually Barnabas. I think him being such a strong tank and being a rock typing on the law side makes a lot of good sense. He offers a decent amount of provoke and resistances, and he can be a good sponge for teams that need a little bit of protection because they're running squishier units like Popo and Camphor and Nadia, and even Stella to an extent, both Stellas. So he is very viable on the law side, more so than I think than the chaos side. So I really like these as the foundational pieces of the law side. You will primarily see most compositions using the majority of these pieces right here on the law side. Now we're going to get into the usable units. These are ones that you can find used and used well, but they're not exactly ones that are even the best to go into this way, similar to Jasper and Anna-Marie. Or they just they're just good, you know. They're not like great, they're just good. I'm going to start this one off with Reiner. I think Reiner as a law is very strong. Him being a rock, being weak only to himself, it's very interesting. He provides similar amount of DPS output, and he has some really cool sunglasses, so that's a plus. So I'm going to put him here, and because of that, I'm also going to be putting Boozer here in the usable options. I think these two are very similar on the law side, given all the water stacking you're going to be doing on this side. Boozer is just a very interesting character. His big harpoon does a considerable amount of damage, but he doesn't have the raw stats as Reiner, and because he isn't a rock element, he actually has more counterplay on the chaos side, or even the law side if you're running similar units like these through the lightning element, which finds more priorities on both sides of the meta. So I'll put him behind Reiner, but he is very much a usable option on the law side. The next I'm going to throw out there is Sasha. Sasha is a very viable tank, and I think she synergizes pretty well with a lot of the options here. She is a wind element, so it might even be good to have her there as a counterplay to potentially limit scaring yourself away from being mono element. She offers a decent amount of taunt. She has really good base stats, and she's kind of like your prototypical tank, but she's not like excelling at being a tank like Barnabas does. So she goes here. In similar nature will be Walter. Walter is a very strong unit, especially within water compositions, but his law side isn't nearly as strong as his chaos side. His chaos side forces them to attack him, which his law side does also, but the difference is that when they attack him, he can still apply the freeze based off that attack. So he's getting multiple ways to apply that freeze effect that makes Walther so viable. So he can find use. You will see that he is a suitable replacement to someone like Stella or Boozer within primary water compositions, but he is very, very slow. So he is not as good in your PvP and Idolas, which focus on the amount of turns it takes to accomplish your tasks. But he is pretty strong. The next one I'm going to put up here is Quana. Quana is a more well-rounded support, I would say, than someone like Nadia, but since The water is primarily focusing around the Stella side of things. She falls down in priority because she doesn't match the typing, and because they offer so much healing and utility on their own, her not having the same amount of buffing potential as Nadia does factor her backwards. Her being a wind is a good secondary option as well. So you can definitely run her onto the law side and find very good use for her, but I wouldn't put her in the S tier or the God tier. She isn't someone that you're looking to just throw out there. Now, we're this far in the video, but I just realized that this is supposed to be replacement and this is supposed to be no thanks, so I'm glad we're not there quite yet. Let's continue on with this. The next I'm going to put up here is Liokin. Similar to these two, I think Liokin is a very strong DPS option. He has very good base stats. I do think that he is better suited as a chaos option in the current meta. Because him being a water typing, it makes him fall further down this list, but you can definitely still use him in my opinion. Then I'm going to add Rosalind for very similar reasons as Liokin, but her as a law is very one-dimensional. Even the way in which her skills play out seems that they kind of build on each other to go up a chain, so she is very linear in her playstyle, and she doesn't even do that well on the law side of things. She is definitely a chaos only type of unit in my opinion, but I mean, if you had her there, she is usable. She is a 5-star unit. She does have those good base stats, but I definitely don't truly recommend her here on the law side, but she is usable. I'll leave it at that. The next I'm going to mention is Zola. I think Zola is good. She definitely loses priority on this side as it's so EB focused. It's not really using your higher level attacks. You're gaining mana so quickly on the law side for the way that these metas are playing out that Zola loses a little bit of priority. Her EB is a pretty lackluster AoE, doesn't offer much utility, and then she's mainly there for her skill cooldown abilities, and it just doesn't seem as needed on the law side as it does on the chaos side. But if you're going to be running her, she's pretty usable, and she can definitely find viability in water comps more so. I wouldn't put her in the replacement tier just because I think she isn't going to be, you can use her well into your law cycle until you get much better units. You could still find reason to have Zola over someone like Reiner. You could have reasons to put her over even someone like Barnabas. So she's definitely a very usable because you can very much plan teams around her and give her synergies and give her purpose. Whereas the replacement level people are really just kind of like stop holders. They're kind of just like people that you could put in there. And which is kind of weird because a lot of them start out as chaos, but that's besides the point. So the last one I'm going to put in usable is Sandra. I think she is still just a good unit. She is a very strong DPS, but she isn't as good of a DPS option as the others on the law side, because if you're going to be using a strong DPS on the law side, it doesn't need to be a sustained DPS. It needs to be these really stronger one-hit KOs, because their role within these team compositions is to try to mask who the priority of your composition is, in my opinion. And if they do leave them up, you can make them pay. Like if, say you're running a Liokin and a Camphor, and the Camphor is hyper scaling this Stella alongside of a Popo. If they come into this composition and they say, okay, Camphor and Stella and Popo are my targets, and they let Liokin keep building up, he is going to make them pay. Sandra, not so much. She applies consistent DPS. She's not as punishing in her typing. It's kind of harder to fit. So I think she's usable. I just don't think she's great. I hope that makes sense. So replacement level, I'm not going to speak much on these. You can just throw them in and they're fine. but you're generally not going to find a ton of viability for them or really even keep them around for too long. So this is your Duncan, your Killian, your Bernhardt, your Abel. We can put Yuli here. We can put Amon here. And I think that's about it for replacement level. The no thanks, these are just units that I don't think you will ever or should even think about running. They're just not very good in my opinion. And so there you have it. That is our law tier list for right now, which is August 23rd. Oh, we're in September, guys. So this is September 23rd. Wow, where's the time gone? So we will come back and look at this after a few updates. Leave me your comments below if you think I said anything wrong, if the rankings seem wrong to you. But I think this should be pretty close to how it plays out. These are definitely the cornerstones that I've seen, and I'm in the top 200 right now. I think I'm at like 140 in PvP and like 180 in Idola. I'm a little further behind in Idolization. I think I'm at like 350, but I can't really help that one a ton. Anyways, guys, this is our tier list for now. Thank you for tuning in. I hope to see more of you in the future. Subscribe, do your thing. Stay blessed. Take care, guys.